You're listening to Speaking Sidemount, the podcast where we talk all things sidemount diving, from equipment, skills, techniques, and sidemount diving expeditions to interviews with some of the world's top sidemount divers. Whether you're new to sidemount, been sidemount diving for years, or just want to know more, this is the place for all things sidemount. I'm your host, Steve Davis. Let's get wet. Hey, welcome back to Speaking Sidemount. I'm Steve Davis. This episode is sponsored by X-Deep. My thanks again to X-Deep for their support of Speaking Sidemount, which makes everything you're about to listen to possible. Now, you may all remember my comments way back in episode 24 when I promised to go and visit Thorsten-Toddy-Waelde after a great discussion on Toddy-style sidemount and the caves of Sardinia. In October last year, I made good on my promise and travelled to Cala Gonona in Sardinia to meet up with Toddy at his dive centre at Protect Sardinia. I then spent an amazing 4 days diving the caves of the region, guided by my now good friend Brian Starnes. It was a really special experience, and I enjoyed it all the more due to the differences from much of the cave diving that I've done in Mexico, Florida, South Australia and Spain. The caves are accessed from the sea via a short boat ride from the port of Cala Gonona. The sea is azure blue, with 30-metre plus visibility, and the cliffs at the cave entrances rise to staggering heights, making it a really stunning land and seascape. We dived Cala Luna, Bel Torrente, and the crowning jewel was a 60-minute dive into Blue Merino, followed by nearly 4 hours of dry caving through some absolutely beautifully decorated passages before we dived the 60 minutes out again. I'm embarrassed to say that I almost missed doing this special dive, as I was more enamored by the diving than the thought of dry caving. My heartfelt thanks to Toddy for bullying me into doing the trip. It was amazing. I had my family with me, and almost equally compelling was the people, the scenery, and food in Sardinia. We had an absolute ball, and we'll be back in the future for sure. Now, while I was there, I managed to corner Toddy at the dive centre, and we started to discuss his latest exploration project, Utopia. To say that this is cutting edge is an understatement. It is the razor edge of technical cave exploration with respect to the distances, depths, multiple levels, and in particular the decompression strategies involved. The use of dual redundant rebreathers, habitats, oxygen preconditioning, specialized medicines to eliminate pulmonary oxygen toxicity, electrocardiograms, intravenous drips, and in-water medical support make this one of the most interesting and anticipated projects currently underway in the world. The learnings from this project could have major positive implications for future explorers. And so I'm very excited to be able to share my discussion with Toddy in this episode of Speaking Sidemount. We talk about the caves of Sardinia, we dive deep into some of the details of Project Utopia, and then Toddy shares on some of the programs he is running at Protect Sardinia to support the next generation of cave explorers. All this and much, much more on this episode of Speaking Sidemount. Toddy, welcome back to Speaking Sidemount.
Hello, Steve. Thank you very much to be back again.
Look, this is awesome. Now, we were together less than a month ago, I think, and I spent just an amazing 10 days in Sardinia, but I spent 4 days diving with your team at Protect Sardinia, and I have to say I just had a brilliant time. Not only was I looked after very well, so thank you for that, but the caves, wow, I was just blown away. And a funny story, you were trying to convince me to do a dive into, I think it was Blue Grotto, where there's a 1 hour dive in and then about 4 hours of dry caving, and for some reason I was a bit resistant. So you had to sit me down and give me the sales pitch and the talk as to what an idiot I was being. So thank you for that, because had I not experienced that, I think I would have missed out on something. So let's talk about the caves of Sardinia in the region you work in, because as I said, I was blown away. I just thought it was brilliant.
Cool. Thank you. Okay. So actually everything starts when I was living in Mexico, and I searched a place somewhere else in the world where I can maybe establish a particular cave training center. I was living in Mexico, living well, was beautiful, fantastic, had a super cool time, learned a lot of stuff. But as well, I'm a kind of independent person. I need to work by myself. I need to have my own business and stuff like that. So I had the possibility to get the information that in Sardinia I heard about something. There are a lot of caves and there are a lot of underwater caves in a particular region called Supramonte. And the bay is Golfo di Orosei, that's the name. So I was fascinated about it because my girlfriend is from Sardinia. I met her in Mexico. And I think 2003, the first visit in the summertime. And of course, straight away, I visited the area and I saw the limestone area is absolutely stunning. I saw the coastline and I saw 400, 500 meter high cliffs dropping down into the ocean, super turquoise blue water. And I saw the cave entrances when I was diving with a local diving center there. So they just put me on the boat and drive me around. And so I had a first glimpse of how it looks like. And I saw this massive limestone area, which is absolutely tremendous, huge. A lot of valleys, a lot of, we call them Baku here in Sardinia. Baku is like a canyon, a valley. So I saw a lot of them and I saw a lot of cave entrance above the water, a little bit under the water. So for me, I was sure something happens here. Because I heard a story that Jochen Hasenmeier was in 1970 the first time in this region, and he actually done a dive in a system called Beltorrente and Boomerino. And for me, it was like, if this guy was there, pretty sure they are underwater caves. I just have to find it. I just have to see what I can do. So I asked the local diving center, hey guys, do you know where this cave entrance is? And they told me, yeah, we know, but we don't dive caves. At that time, nobody really think about doing some really cave diving. And I asked them, hey guys, can you drive me to the entrance? And is it okay if I do the dive and you pick me up 4 hours later or stuff like that? And the first time he looked at me and said, are you crazy or what? I said, no, I'm serious, so I will be right on time. If you tell me 3 hours, I'm 3 hours back. If you tell me 4 hours, I'm absolutely 4 hours back. So he was not sure about it, but he said, what can I do with this crazy German guy? So let's drop him and let's have a look about it. So I done my dives for a couple of weeks and I was like mind blown. It was like crazy. The caves are going wild and I had a lot of possibilities, and of course, line conditions was super bad, but I had a fantastic time. I think I was 2 weeks constantly on diving, and every dive, I explored some areas and some new passages and whatever. So I saw the huge potential of this coast area. When my holiday was done, I was something like a month in August here. The idea was born, and I realized, okay, I think I found the right spot in Europe. And I tried to open the first European cave training center. And that was my idea. So I went back to Mexico, but my mind was already in Sardinia, diving these caves, exploring these caves, because I saw the potential. So it was 2004. I actually moved from Mexico to Sardinia. I helped this diving center a little bit in their center. I'd done my first classes, something like maybe advanced nitrous classes, dramix classes, and already a little bit of cave diving. But 2005, over the winter time, I had the time to search a good place in a hotel. I found a fantastic area, so I rent the rooms there. We rebuilt everything from the ground. Protect Sardinia was born, So it was 2005, my first season. I started in April. And of course, a couple of people, friends, came over because they told me, hey, where's Toddy? There are caves for sure. So we just need to go down and have a look because Sardinia was at that time absolutely unknown into the cave world. So nobody had any idea that there are caves in Europe, fantastic like they are, with highly decoration, long penetrations. So you can do everything in this region. So 2005, I actually started then Protect Sardinia.
Fantastic. And one of the great things that I found about visiting Sardinia is it's such an amazing place just in itself. Obviously, it's Italy, and so it has the Italian style thing going on. And it was really easy to access from anywhere in Europe. So we flew in from Barcelona. It was an easy flight. We flew into Olbia. I think we could have gone to Cagliari as well. And then it was a really nice drive south from Olbia to get to you through some beautiful countryside and some just lovely towns. I actually brought my family my son dives, but the rest of my family don't. And they had a brilliant time. So it was one of those places where it wasn't just about the diving. There was also all the Italian culture and everything else that goes with it, which made it just a brilliant place to visit.
Right. Yeah. That was as well something that attracted me a lot when I visited Sardinia the first time. When I talked with my girlfriend and we chat around and she told me, oh, wow, we have fantastic waters and beaches and mountains and everything. So you can do a lot of stuff, no? The first time I was not sure because I was like, yeah, Sardinia is somewhere in Italy, no? It was like, even though I'm European, but I always searched countries far away from Europe, But actually, it was then fantastic because when I came to this area, the difference, particularly from Mexico, was like here I can do a lot more activities, particularly if you have a little bit time off for yourself. I super love outdoors. I'm a guy who's doing caving and dry caving. I'm a very passionate and moto enduro driver, hard enduro driver. So I saw heaven on earth because I realized, oh man, this is something way more than what I can do in Mexico. You have the caves, but everyday cave diving after a while is getting boring, so you need to change your lifestyle and you want to do something. And here I have a lot of opportunities. I can kayak on the beaches. I can do some hiking trips. I can do some super cool sport climbing. I can do mountain biking, enduro driving, whatever you want to do. So, and part of that, of course, you have fantastic food available. And the people from Sardinia are absolutely fantastic, super friendly. And if you get their heart, if you open their heart, you can have a lot of possibilities and you can enjoy a lot of stuff here.
Yeah, I noticed there's a little bit of the Italian cool going on, which is fine. But once you get to know people, it was terrific. We found that in all of the restaurants and bars. If we went to a place 3 or 4 times, they got to know us. I just loved it. We loved the food. And actually, my wife cooked pasta last night and she said, oh, this is the first pasta I've had since Sardinia. I was craving some. So it was fantastic.
Awesome. Very
One
good.
of the things I noticed was the amount of climbing going on because of the sheer cliffs and the height of them around a couple of the beaches we went to. There were many, many climbers. So there is a lot going on, isn't there?
Yes, a lot. I think you have a particular Calagonone, the town where I have my diving center, is actually one of the best hotspots for climbers. So they come from all around Europe, sometimes from overseas, just to visit the area and do some climbing because it's one of the raw places in the world where you can do some cliff climbing, like really from boats. You start to climb from a rubber boat and you climb up, or you have places where you hike through and then you start to climb just above the sea, And the scenery for that is just fantastic. So climbing, it's quite huge here.
So let's talk about the caves a little. One of the things that's different from my recent experience, at least, is that we're accessing the cave from the ocean, from the sea, saltwater via boat. And they were great entries. They went there. I mean, the visibility is really, really good. It was 30 meter plus and the water's quite warm outside the cave. So it was really nice, but it's a little different to what I've dived in some other regions like Florida and Mexico and so on. And then you make your way into the cave. You're going through the saltwater, freshwater interface. One of the caves, I think it was El Torrente, has a pretty decent hydrogen sulfide layer in there as well. So a little different to what you get in some of the other cave diving regions of the world.
Yes, exactly. For me, it was like, as I told you before, a couple of years I was living in Mexico. And of course, Mexico is beautiful. You have your highly decorated cave systems. But of course, after a couple of years, you're a little bit fed up with all the formations and everything because you're overloaded. So what happens with me here in Sardinia, because Sardinia is kind of a mix between, let's say, maybe Mexico and a particular European pressure tube systems. So the cave systems are definitely more, I would say, more challenging. So challenging in their complex navigation, which is, of course, is not like Mexico itself, but it's quite huge and a lot of possibilities you have, but more complex in the way of you dive the system or you explore the systems. So particularly this region, particularly the entrance of the cave systems are normally quite shallow. We're talking about depths of 5 meters, 8 or 10 meters, 12 meters, something like that. But from the geology, we know that there are some drafts in particular parts and particular areas. So the particular passage and the form of the caves are shallow in. Then you have a deeper part, around 60, 70 meters. Then it's going up again. You follow it again, around 10, 20 meters, and it drops then again into the depth. Okay? Right. So it depends on the system. You have extremely multi-level profile systems here in Gulf of the USA. So we're talking about later Utopia, just to let you know, this is one of the acro saves cave dive I ever did because of this really, really hard profile. And just like in the beginning of the spring, we found another cave system. I explored so far to over 2 kilometers, and I reached already depth of minus 70 meters, dive times of around 5 to 6 hours at a moment. And this cave is just the beginning. We are just like an area where I saw passages in minus 70 meters, which are going in any direction. You don't know where you have to start. So deeper you go into the systems, more complex the systems are getting, you know? So, and that makes, of course, all the dive, the planning and everything very, very complex. But that's what I love in my way of cave diving. I love the complex diving. I love long penetrations. I love the multiple phases in a cave because it's kind of a challenge. So when people ask me, but what is the difference? I said always a little bit like, listen, if you dive a cave here and you do kind of an exploration dive, is kind of a more of an adventure because it's more, I would say, wild, you know? So in Mexico, you dive, but you're mostly in shallow spots. You dive. But then you come out, you pop out from a cenote and you're in the middle of the jungle. But you know sooner or later a cenote will come. But here, if you dive here inside, you go inside one time. You need to find a way back, need to come back to the main entrance because that's what's the goal. And what is very different here is you have a lot of multiple siphon possibilities. Like what I told you, like the Blue Marino trip, which we offer in Project Sardinia, is like a 1 hour dive in and kind of a 4-5 hour dry caving trip through lakes. You swim through lakes, you climb up some shafts, you can see incredible formations.
Yes.
And you go further, you can reach the other siphon. You can see the siphon where you still can dive, you know, but far away from the main entrance. So you come back, you have a trip of 6, 7, 8 hours in a day, which you can do, you know, and these multiple siphon dives are just like gorgeous here. Okay.
Yeah.
So that's why it's so attractive for me and for many divers. They come here because it's a combination of the diving, everything may be underwater, or if you search something above the water, you can do everything, any kind of cave activity, small, big, huge tunnels, whatever you want. So that's why I'm so attracted to this area, and that's why I love this area so much.
I'm struggling to recall some of the early ones that I dived, so I don't know if you remember, probably not, but I know I did Beltorrente on the second to last day, Blue Grotto. Do you remember the other ones that I did?
You did Cala Luna as well?
Yes.
Blue Marino you did, Beltorrente you did,
yes.
And I think you went as well to Grotta del Fico.
Okay. So let's talk through some of those specific ones. I mean, the Blue Marino trip was, as you described it, I mean, the thing that blew me away was a really interesting kind of, 1 hour dive into the cave, and that was nice in itself. I thoroughly enjoyed that. But then coming to the far end of that, taking our gear off and going through some of the rooms that were there, and, we were climbing up some mud faces and down and those sort of things. But the formations, as you say, are just staggering. So they're crystalline formations, beautiful white with specks of gold. It was just amazing to look at. That was the one I dropped my camera on, right? So I'm partway into the cave and the hydrogen sulfide layer is still there somewhere. And I wasn't so angry about losing the camera. I was angry about losing the opportunity to film what we saw that day because it was really, really nice.
Yeah. Particular Blue Marino is actually called Monte Longo system.
Right.
It was actually just like for a couple of months ago, it was the biggest cave system in whole Italy. It has around 72 kilometers, something like that, which are already a little bit more right now. But there's another dry cave system in Italy, north of Italy, where they went over to around 100 kilometers right now.
Wow.
But still, Blue Marino is just like a monster of a cave. So we're talking about 72 kilometers. And there are a lot of inland cave systems. We call them, for example, one is Supalo, Suspiria, Sumolentes. So huge systems, they're already connected together right now. So particularly the dive, what you can do is on the main entrance from the seaside on, it's just like fantastic because you dive in around 5 meters. Particularly the first around 15, 20 minutes, It's kind of a hydrogen sulfide layer, as you described before, which is a supermostic scenery. So when you start a dive and you dive a little bit above the hydrogen sulfide layer, and you see just like kind of a white carpet underneath, and the fresh water on top is just like flowing gently back to the exit. So you realize, oh, wow, this is something particular. And the deeper you penetrate, the more it cleans up. And the water, as you remember, the water is getting crystal clear then after around 30 minutes of penetration. But you're still in a water column of 5 meters, 7 meters, 8 meters maximum. So decompression is something which you absolutely not face in that particular cave dive. And that's what is cool about, because after that, you can see kind of flow stones, which are really like 15, 20 meters, sometimes long. So a flow stone in that particular size is something very, very unique, because the cave systems are one of the oldest in whole Europe. So Sardinia is one of the oldest stone region in general in Europe. And as well, this cave systems are reaching around 20 million years and stuff like that. Wow. So it's just like breathtaking what the caves are done as well in their dimension. We're talking about 8 meters, 10, 12, 15 meter wide cave entrances. You just can imagine if you dive inside and you understand a little bit the geology of it, you just dive in pure history. And that's the super fun of particular Boomerino, because Boomerino is one of the biggest cave systems here in the region. And you just have multiple possibilities, particularly after around 40, 45 minutes, the water is getting super crystal clear. It's really changing from the mixed alkaline zone with fresh and salt water. It's going into pure fresh water. And then you have a really kind of a white cave in front of you, highly decorated stalactites, stalagmites, and columns everywhere. And kind of sometimes water levels on above a few kind of lakes where you can go up to the surface and have a look how beautiful they are decorated. And after an hour, passing through some restriction as well, some other pressure tubes, you end up in a lake, you drop the gear there, and the excursion starts with dry caving, and this is a completely other sense of feeling and another technique involved. So you just walk, climb, crawl, you see sandy layers, you can see super nice formations above the water. You can pull yourself through lakes and swim through some lakes or jumping into lakes. So it's just like a super adventure. And this is what you actually face, no? When we talked about in the morning, as you remember, and I told you, hey, man, Steve, you sure you don't want to go? Because of the dry cave, I think you have to go. You have to move. I really put a pistol on your head, and I said, "Man, you have to go."
No. Well, it was like
so,
I guess from me, I just wanted to dive, So it was kind of, I thought, no, look, I'm dry caving, okay, but I just want to dive. But it was way worth it. So I'm glad you did that.
Absolutely. I was like, he has to. If I'm dragging him in, you have to go there.
Awesome.
Yeah, that's kind of Boomerino. We call them the North Passage. And there's another passage called Ramo del Mezzo. One is Ramo North, which you did. And there's another one called Ramo Mezzo. That's a fantastic story about that. Ramo Mezzo was many years not found anymore. Jochen Hasenmeyer, he done a little bit of part of it, maybe around 900 meters, maybe kilometers inside maximum. He just draw something on a paper, and he let his paper by a person here in Calagonone. And this paper just disappeared. So nobody really knows if there is another Ramo, another possibility of diving it. So I had a luck, because the person, he showed me that paper, and I realized, oh, wow, that's another passage. That's between Ramo South and Ramo North. So there are 3 branches going on. So it was 2005 or 2006, something like that, just when I was new here. So I searched that Ramo, and I found it, and I set up around 400 meters in the first dive. There was no line installed anymore. But after around 400 meters, I found an old wire from Jochen Hasenmeyer. So I know I was absolutely right. The compass tell me the truth. And it was a fantastic passage. It was incredible. It was as well super highly decorated. And I found a dry cave area, which it blows me away. So I dropped the gear, I walked out over a super huge dry cave, like huge, like a cathedral, super nice haloctites, for example, on the walls and carpets and straws and everything. It was just like crazy. So I done a couple of dives and I pushed that Ramo to around over 2.5 kilometers. And then I told a group which was working there hard on it since 20 years, a group from the Czech Republic, very strong cavers, good cave divers. So I told them, hey, look, this is what I found. You should go there. You should continue exploration. The cave is just going on. I leave the line and a huge, massive tunnel. You just have to connect through and go further. So they pushed it further then, because I don't want to take over their project. So they pushed it further. Right now, there is a penetration distance of over 4.5 kilometers, and still the cave is going on. So I was there a couple of times just like for fun. It's just like breathtaking. You have a dive of around 6-7 hours, something like that. But it's fantastic. So we're talking about quite shallow cave. We're talking about average depth, 12 meters, 15 meters. There are some areas where you drop down to 35 meters, then you go up again to 8 meters, 10 meters. Close to the end, you have another pitch. It's just like almost a vertical pitch, a pressure tube, which it leads you down to 50 meters. After 50 meters, just like on the bottom, you dive a couple of meters further and it's going straight away up to 8 meters again. And then it continues. So just like this gives you the idea again of how complex these systems are and how huge they are. And there's still a lot of unexplored side passages, which I figured out over the years now, which are still in exploration. So there's absolutely a lot to do.
Now, look, talking about these multi-level dives, and it's something that's been interesting for me for a while, which is managing decompression when you're going through those sort of profiles, because obviously, typically, you don't want to do that. However, when you're in a cave, you have no option, right? You're going to go shallow, then you're going to go deeper, shallow, and then you've got to come out again. So let's talk a little bit about how you manage decompression before we work into Project Utopia or the exploration projects. It would be interesting just to have a general discussion on how you do that.
Okay. So in general, I think you need to understand that the general dive, you can do a lot in open circuit. You can do a lot with just normal air or perfect as nitrox, for example. And you can do very long dives, something like 2-3 hour dives, just like talking about a regular cave diver who has good experience. He want to do some 2-3 hours dive, no problem at all. And we're talking about no decompression. So the most of the passages, actually, you can do like long range dives, stage, multiple stages, no problem at all, or rebreather diving, whatever you want to do, no problem at all. So that's kind of a fantastic way for us, because at first it's super good for training. So particular, we can offer a lot of range of different cave systems. And all the time when we do some training, we actually really don't face any decompression at all. Okay. Sometimes maybe 3 minutes, 5 minutes, whatever. Most of the time we are really clean. So we do long range dives, super nice for the training, as I told you, or for people they're experienced. They want to just have fun. Fantastic for scuba diving and everything. But if you search something where you want to go deeper into that system, we're talking about more than 1.5-2 kilometers of penetration. Caves, as I told you, start to change. So you will face for sure deeper passages. And of course, you think about, you just like enter maybe an hour of diving time or an hour of scootering or whatever, and you're on shallow water. Of course, you load up with nitrogen, that's clear. So the best choice for that kind of diving is definitely all the time with rebreathers. Particular Blackmon rebreather, particular Sidemount rebreathers, which we use a lot. So this is my way of diving here. It's a lot of rebreather diving involved, because in this case, I can have the best decompression profile, which I need to come back. Of course, saving kind of time and as well having the best mixes with me, because if you go down to 40 meters, 45, then you go up again to 5 meters, sometimes 2 meters, then you drop again down to 50 meters. This is pretty hard for the body, and you need to think how you can do it as best. And the best choice for that kind of diving is definitely using the rebreathers. and try to have, of course, the constant fast mix with you.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And of course, I talked to Richard Harry Harris a little bit about some of the dives they've done. And what was interesting, you incur a decompression obligation when you first go to the deeper sections. And then, of course, you're still penetrating, but you're going shallow again. You've got to off gas and decompress during that phase before you go on and do the rest of your dive. And then, of course, you've got to repeat that again on the way out. So what you're saying is effectively having the best gas available to you via a rebreather is the best way to manage that as you're coming out. And I'm assuming you're using computers and Bowman type algorithms for that.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So my best experience actually is kind of using a gradient factor. I don't want to go into which setup I did, because every diver has to choose by themselves. But I tell you, I'm driving pretty high. So in this case, it was the perfect solution for me. So what I did right now, and we will talk later about Utopia project, a lot of studies and particular help from Professor Dr. Frank Hartig and from Andrea Köhler, the wife of Frank. These two guys are just like mind-blowing physiologists and decompression specialists. We realized from as well my medical state point on what will be the best for my health, for the long-term dives and everything. So, of course, the community is diving a lot with high PPO2s, 1.3, 1.4, pushing on it on the decompression stops and stuff like that. I'm went completely away from that. So I have a completely different strategy right now. So if I do pretty long dives, I'm prepared for the coldness, okay, with heating systems and stuff like that. If I dive an hour longer or whatever, it doesn't make any change. And what I do right now actually is I'm dropping down the PPO2 to have my lungs affected to the oxygen, and I have a big difference right now. So I'm actually working with a PPO2 mostly with 1.0 constantly in almost any depth.
And so what that means is from the pulmonary oxygen point of view, you've got a much greater period of time than on a higher PPO2. Is that the reasoning?
Exactly. So what I try to avoid, of course, we will go later deeper into techniques I actually used for the Utopia project, but there are outstanding possibilities at the moment just covered at the moment, okay, which we try to realize there's something new coming, okay, new medicine, new possibilities of oxygen mask you can use, stuff like that. So there's a lot of opportunities, I think, for the future generation of explorers. And particular Utopia is kind of a pilot project, which we cover and face a lot of the situation, because the profile in Utopia is kind of one of the hardest I ever did, and one of the hardest I ever know, because of this really traumatic change of the depth itself. And constantly, it's not just like you go down to 100 meters and you stop and then you go and you come back. That's something which, of course, it's challenging, but in the end, it's easier in the planning. But if you reach down depths of 130, 120 meters, you go up again to maybe 12 meters, then you reach again back 90 meters, 80 meters. And this is going on constantly for several times. You face not a problem. And you can't play with high PPO2s because your lungs are just burning. And the dives before I did, particularly in Utopia, dives like 7, 8, 9, 10 hours, my lungs are burning like the hell. I was like, oh my God. I was happy to go out. I was everything constantly underwater. So for me, it was like, okay, this is a normal dive. And I know the lungs are burning like the hell. I didn't really realize what happened, which damage I do to my lungs. And that was the time where I started change to think a different way and to work on a different strategy.
Let's zero in on some of the things that you're doing in Utopia, because I just was blown away when I started to see some of the video and promotions that you did for that. Particularly, again, in terms of not only the sheer distances and times of dives that you were doing and the levels that were happening, but also the way that you were managing decompression, I thought was, well, it's absolutely cutting edge. And so I am really interested in whatever you can share about that.
Absolutely. Yeah, sure. With pleasure. So I dived this cave called Utopia, just like the name. It's just like fantastic, you know. The first time I dived Utopia was 2003 when I was here, just like checking out. And I remember the first dive, I just talked with this guy from the diving center, sport diving center. I said, oh, yeah, okay, you know the entrance of the Utopia? And he said, yeah, I know the entrance. And I said, okay, cool. I have a look about it. So I went there just like with 2 Sidemount tanks, a little bit. I think I had 3-4 tanks with me, something like that. A little bit for decompression, everything open circuit, because I didn't have any idea. So I went down, and it was just like, I asked the guy, hey, where's the cave entrance? He's just like, yeah, watch down, you can see it. And in around 12 meters depth, I saw kind of a triangle entrance, rocks, and pitch black shaft. And I said, oh, this is it, no? So let's go. So I went down. The cave entrance starts on 12 meters, and then you just like glide through, and the shaft is going down to around 27, 28 meters. And then the cave is just like, it opened up, and it's just like tremendous. You can't shine your light to the side walls because it's just like tremendous, huge, no? So I went inside, and I was in a constant depth of 30, 35 meters for a while, and I realized, oh man, this is definitely not an open circuit cave. I need to bring my rebreather, you know? But anyway, I had a first glimpse of it, and I saw this huge, massive tunnel that blew me away. So I went back, I went out, I said it was clear, okay, this is definitely CCR cave. So when I came 2005, I start frequently dive Utopia, and of course, I'd done a little bit of research, get some information from the first explorers from HFGOK. It's a German group. They done a super nice work there in Utopia from around 99 to 2005 or something like that. They've done a lot of exploration there, exploration dives, particularly Markus Schafheuter was one of the leader cave explorer there, and he actually pushed the cave to a certain limit. And that was fantastic. That was mind-blowing. So I realized a little bit the complexity of the system, but over the time, I went deeper in, found other passages going on, and I realized, oh man, this is something different. So, of course, it was always rebreather involved. Normal standard dive time there, for me, it's between 4 to 6 hours. That's standard. That's normal. I don't think about it. Everything just like shorter if you want to explore something. So this time, I realized, okay, you need to have a lot of gases and stuff like that. I was working with backmount rebreathers and sidemount rebreathers as well that time a little bit. But over the years, I realized the dives are getting longer, more challenging. The depth profile is just like getting crazy. If you just think you're in around 2.5 kilometers, you penetrate, and it's just like the first shaft. And the first shaft, it goes from 12 meters to 80 meters. And then before you was on constant depth of 35, 40 meters, then 12 meters, then again 60 meters, and then again up. And from the 80 meters, this just like the cave is getting more wild, more depths involved. You constantly depths on 50, 60 meters for 30 minutes, 50 minutes, whatever. It's going up again. Then you drop down to 120 meters, and the cave is going on like that. So you have normally 2 decompression phases still in the cave. The first decompression phase we're talking about in over 5 kilometer penetration. That's the first shaft when you exit from 120 meters and you actually do the whole shaft on top. You have a long-term decompression already involved, but you realize you are almost 5 kilometers in the cave. So that's something completely different. I realized when I went back and had the dives of 8, 9, 10 hours, I realized my lungs are burning. And I had the technique of people too higher up. Of course, in 120, I was about 1.2, but more accuracy on the way back, push it up. And of course, the whole dive time, when I went out to the boat or to the shore, I realized, oh shit, man, my lungs are burning like 2 days, 3 days. And that's something which is definitely not good. How I can go further, how I can explore particularly the end passage, which Rick Standen and I explored 2013. We reached 125 meters. I saw that the cave is just like going on, and we realized, oh man, we are kind of in a limit position, you know? So after this dives, I said to myself, Toddy, I think you need to find another strategy. You need to find another way to explore that system, because you reach certain limits, physiological limits for your body and brain and everything. You need to find another strategy. I think it was 2 years ago, I met a friend of mine, Professor Dr. Frank Hartig, and he is one of the decompression physiologists in the world. He has tremendous experience and that kind of diving and decompression techniques. He's just like doing fun dives in Aachensee or study dives, where he goes down to 100 meters and he's staying 100 meters for an hour or 2 hours. And he's collecting blood samples in the depth and doing other crazy tests. And when I heard the first time then, I said, what the hell are you doing? He's doing 6-7 hours in super cold water. That's what he's doing it, just like for research. So we had a talk about it 2 years ago, I think. And I told him, look, man, I think I need a crazy guy like you. I need your help. And I need your help from your wife because she is fantastic in decompression strategies and she can control all the compartments and she can play with the gases and do some modeling. And because I have the profile already almost to the deepest point. So it's just like how we can deal with it and which gases are the best. And for many, many months, we worked on a strategy with, of course, with the gases, but as less gases as possible because I dive frequently over years. The dual Sidemount system means a backmount rebreather and a Sidemount rebreather. Of course, I need to control all the gases, the instruments and everything. It's a very, very complex strategy. When people sometimes think about, the dual rebreather is something easy. I just put a Sidemount rebreather on the side. I just smile. I just laugh. I said, you have no idea, man. You know, it's different as put a Sidemount rebreather to backmount rebreather when you are in a lake and you do a shallow dive and you don't have decompression involved as something you do in an exploration. There are a few experts in the world that are able to dive properly a dual rebreather and trusting in it because your life depends right now on both rebreathers. And this is something not to show or to film and you tell, hey, I'm a dual rebreather diver. Personally, for me, there's much more involved. I learned over the years. I've done mistakes, bad mistakes. I survived. I got safe. And I learned a lot about it. And I realized dual rebreather diving needs serious training, constantly update your configuration and try to make it as smart as possible. And this happens with the Utopia project. But it's not just like about the configuration, it's about the strategy. So when this professor told me, Toddy, I have some ideas. The idea was at first, I told him, look, I think one of the problem is, of course, the oxygen pulmonary situation, because I'm loading so much what we can do, because I'm a little bit afraid about, of course, of the oxygen toxicity situation. And he said, forget about it. And I said, what do you mean forget about it? And he said, listen, we study about 5 years with the German military, and we have kind of a medicine which it will block your oxygen toxicity situation. So that means we prevent the oxygen toxicity for around 12 hours. You need to take this medicine for a certain time. I cannot tell any name or something like that because everything will be published at first in medical magazines, well-known magazines and journals and everything. And that's the reason why I will not tell any names about products or whatever. But in the future, for sure, there will coming some stuff out that people understand what we actually use. The first time he told me a name, he explained me how does it work and for which reason actually the medicine is used. I was like looking at him and I said, are you kidding? And he said, no, this is what it happens. So for me, it was like, wow, mind blowing. So I had a lot of test phases before. That was just like one thing, like how we control the oxygen toxicity situation. So this is a medicine. Another technique was, for example, absolutely using the habitat. Even if the water temperature is warm around 24 degree, 23 degree in August when I do the exploration or the end of July, it's not about the temperature. That's something which is pretty easy. The cave in general has around 14, 15 degree permanently in the freshwater zone. So for many people, they will have always say, what the hell? I dive in 6, 7 degree water. But if you are 11 or more hours in the water of 15 degree, you start to freeze, and a lot. And the problem is you don't have any shorts to go out. You need to have a couple of hours for the way back. So you are in this constantly cold temperature. But thermal-wise, there are some good techniques, so that's not a real problem. So we're working on the habitat with a friend of mine, Oliver Steinle. He's my business partner in Sidemount Explorer. And we actually designed a particular folded habitat, which we installed in a depth of around 12 meters. Because he told me what he can do when you have the long fast after decompression, we can do multiple scenarios and multiple possibilities. For example, you will get liquid like your intravenous. So I think nobody did this to get the blood fluid and you get the right fluid and everything and to be a bit awake, because that's what you do in the hospital. You do the same. The first, what you do, you give infusion to the patient. And the same we did actually straight away in 12 meters depth. So I actually came out from the dive. I went into the habitat and I changed my tri-suit slowly. Okay, I take it off, pull it in the back, put it up to the surface, just pulled it out of the habitat. And I was sitting inside just like with a kind of a shorty. And the doctor came in and he gave me the infusion. So we had the overpressurized back. So he pumped it up. So automatically the fluid will start to moving on because, of course, in a depth of 12 meters in a habitat, normally this back will not move anything. So you need an overpressure back just like for that. So after that, he put it in because, of course, I was tired. I was around 7 hours on the work, and doing a lot of stuff and always permanently in these depths. And 2 decompressions phases already did. So I came inside in the habitat, he gave me the infusion, and the world changed. So immediately I start to feel, whoa, I wake up, I come back to life. Fantastic. That's something really, really cool. So this is kind of a technique we use in the decompression phase in the habitat, for example. Another technique, it's a overpressure mask, which we use. You put it on and you can control the flow by yourself. You have around 5 bar, something like that per minute. It's a constant flow that automatically it changes always the situations of your alveoli. So you actually clean your lungs 100% instead of being in the water column and breathing from a rebreather, which you maybe have 2/3 of your lungs washed out with oxygen. So a problem is that to have a most efficient decompression situation is really using a mask with overflow techniques. That's something which is fantastic. And this is what we actually used. And a couple of other things more, which I don't want to go too deep inside. But just like to let you know, he told me that before and I said, are you kidding? Do you think that it works? And I said, yes, this is what we will do. And this is how it will work. I think you have right now the highest standard of decompression informations, which we can give to you. And even as well, of course, you are kind of a dummy because nobody did dives like that before with this profile and using these techniques. So when we done the first calculations on the computers and modeling everything, we realized with this technique, what we do right now, we reduce a decompression time of around 3 hours easy. And this was just like the fast one. I called it fast one because it was kind of a test fast. So my goal, we come later to that, it's something way further than what we did this summer. But this summer was an 11-hour dive, which is normally 14 to 15 hours we calculate if I would do everything underwater. So with all these new techniques and knowledge of about what we are able to do for the decompression, with this knowledge, we reduced around 3 hours of decompression time. And that was something I didn't believe the first time. I said, you guys, you're kidding. That's impossible. If you do this, if you do this, if you do this. I had some techniques which I had to stay on a machine, for example. And this machine was just like a short time before I done the dive. It was shaking my body to settle up all the gas bubbles which I have in my body, to settle them down, to make it good. I had a pre-oxidation situation, which I breathed oxygen a good time before the dive it starts itself. And as well, in the dive, the way down, you push it to a super high PPO2, just like the first 10 meters, 12 meters, something like that. So a lot of techniques involved. And I realized this is our thing, cutting edge situations. Because when I came out after the dive, I start 11 o'clock at night and I came out in the morning, I think 10:30, something like that. So out of the habitat, So I went to the boat, I had some checks, so we had a lot of control systems, heart rates, heart beatings and everything, and blood pressure samples again, I realized I don't have any problems of my lungs. Not the dives I had before. I feel just super great. So for me, it was like mind-blowing. I was super fit. I was like, hey guys, no problem at all. I'm a little bit tired, but really in general, I never felt like that with all my dives before. So I realized all these techniques we use for this project, it's, I think, the right way to do. And when I had a talk 2 years ago with this professor, Frank, we call him Johnny as well. So because he opened my eyes, he told me, Toddy, I can help you, but I searched actually a guy like you. He's able to do something like that because there are not a lot of people that can do something like that, but as well willing to give me the trust to do things which no exploration diver did before. So I said, look, listen, I realized the things you told me, the discussion we had, the deep discussion we had about it, of all the strategies, I think I start to change the topic of this project. So I think this project, the main goal at the moment so far is actually the medical history and the medical aspects of that dive, the research behind dives like that. Because a lot of our colleagues, they do some exploration dives, they're coming back, but what is missing is the information. What happens with the diver before, how fit he was, which medication he had, which food he had, what happens after the dive, what are the symptoms and how he react to it, and is there any blood sample available where you can do a lot of possibilities and study a lot about it. So nobody really done something like that, as I know. Maybe what color projects or whatever, but still, that was not the medical aspect. My idea then was, okay, I think I changed the whole idea. I want to have medical backgrounds, history. I want to change the world of exploration for the future generation and give them the tools, the keys to make dives like that safer. Because we know in the past, things happen and things happen just like fingertip, and it's just like everything is going wrong. And if we would use modern technologies and doing it in a different way, and you can make dives like that way more safer. It's not that it's not dangerous anymore or something like that. It's, of course, it's super dangerous, and the risk you have an injury or you can die, it's, of course, is very, very high. But I said to myself, I try to get the best experts in the world in this project and try to create a safety ball in any aspects, in planning, training the team. We had Dan involved. They just like in standby position from the time I started dive. There was a permanent contact to the Dan head office, the habitat situation, a medical team completely trained. There was a doctor on the boat. There was a doctor with me all the time in the habitat itself. And there's a lot of possibilities to do. So that was actually my main goal on the dive itself. The main idea of the Utopia exploration is I want to try to do kind of a world record, like going as deep as possible, over 8.5 kilometers, I think more or less the record is now. So I'm trying to reach over 10 kilometers in this cave. I think the cave has the potential because the way where the cave goes is a completely unknown area. I have over 20 kilometers still ahead of me. The cave profile itself, and from 2 independent geologists which are here from the region, they told me, Toddy, this cave is not just like going quick up to the surface or whatever. I think you will stay way longer underwater, and this cave is just like going on, because that's kind of the major collector in the Supramundo area. So I realized that, and I told to myself, I think this is something which I can achieve. It's not just like to run behind a world record. It's not about that. It's just like, for me, I'm able to do that. Can I do it? I would love to. I would love to achieve something like that. Yeah, for me, It's kind of why people go to the Mount Everest. Is it something for them? Yeah. You can stop these guys. No, If they want to go, they go. So it's the same for me. Utopia is like a dream. I don't know if I achieve this goal, but I think the way I did right now, and I formed the team and the mathematical aspects right now behind all this project, it gives me, I think, the possibility to do something like that. And at the moment, we are working on phase 2, which happened the next year in the end of July. Phase 2 is maybe a dive which reached about 15 to 20 hours dive time. So this is where we are right now, because the first phase 1 is done. So we've done some checks. I was on time limits, which we set up in the team. So just to be clear that everything is okay. But the next phase, there will be no time limits anymore. I found a passage which I believe it will continue. It's in around 50 meters left. So the deep passage I already explored. It doesn't go further, God save. So I'm a little bit in more shallow water. I deal with 80, 50 meters, stuff like that. I don't know what happens afterwards. Maybe I reach again another 120 meter, 130 meter dive or whatever. I'm prepared for that. But the cave is still constantly going to southeast. And the cave, which I saw, I just like scooted in for maybe 15 minutes. And I realized, oh man, this is just like, it opens up again. Huge chambers, just like super huge. And I realized, oh man, this is the main passage. So the goal is to go in that passage and push as further as I can. And we're talking about right now distances of around 5.5 kilometers, Amazing. Like that. Yeah, so for me, it was like, if I didn't have the time pressure, I was pretty sure I could go further. I could expand maybe to 6.5 or 7 kilometers, something like that. I have all the super support from sponsors, which are fantastic. I have sponsors, they really sponsor just like food, drinks, Peloton, for example, or Seacraft scooters. They help me, or SF Tech for dry suits and heating vests and stuff like that. So there are a lot of sponsors involved right now. With their help, I'm able to do this, because everything what I do is actually my cost. I invest money in it, and I just have super luck that people help me without asking money so far as well. That's fantastic. It's kind of a super cool team at the moment. And without this team, I would not be able to do something like that. There would be a certain limit where I realized, of course, I can dive 15 hours in the cave, but what happens afterwards? You don't know. If you don't have a support team, if you don't have a medical, if something happens, the risk that you get injured, it's super high. And that's why I would like to avoid that, because, of course, if you have a team around that, which are waiting overnight on the boats, on the beaches, everything is prepared, landing places for a helicopter and stuff like that, of course, you go with a different mindset into this exploration, because you know, hey, don't worry. The only thing what you need to do is come back to the habitat. After you're back in the habitat, everything is safe. Everything is under control. You just need to do the fastest. You just need to do your regular gas switches and stuff like that. But mainly, you are more safe. Of course, the exploration is more wider open and more relaxed, because you have your support, and that is something that sounds amazing. Very, very unique.
We were talking earlier, and you mentioned as part of this overarching exploration project that there were opportunities for other people to become involved. Talk just briefly about that.
Yeah, okay. So the major project is, as I told you, is Utopia, but it has a special name. The project itself, it calls Supramonte Cast Exploration Project. The main idea, I create a logo, and super nice, it's super cool. But I want to go a little bit further with it, because there are many other cave systems we explored as a team, like Grotta del Fico. Belterent in particular is one of the second major project, which I explored with some friends of mine. It's a super multiple siphon project, which involves around 4 to 7 days at a moment staying in the cave and explore deeper passages. I was as well with Rick standing there and other friends. And we're working very, very hard on that cave system. We explored almost about 8.6 kilometers at a moment. So we take over on around 2.6 kilometers from the HFGOK, the German cave group. They explored there. So from 2.6 kilometers, we went in the last years to 8.6 kilometers. And there's way more to do. But I realized with the SCAP project, SKAP, I want to involve as well divers into the projects, but a little bit a step back. So we want to have cave divers involved. They just want to learn how to explore. So how is to collect the data, how you work with the Nemo system, for example, which we use in the exploration. How is the dry cave part, how you collect the informations with laser pointers, okay, with palms, how you transfer the data, how you create maps, stuff like that. So the idea behind the SCAP project is having kind of weak projects where the people just can join in. It's a certain amount of money they have to pay, which we offer then all the gases, the tanks and logistics and boat transfers and stuff like that. And just like learning and mapping and amazing. Become maybe a future explorer, you know? So that's what we want to do. One of a super cool trip, which I did this year right now with clients, it's kind of a cave camp project. That means we have around 3 days a project. The first day is like I explain everything about dry tubing, what to pack, which material you take, emergency protocols, what happens when, which kind of cooking material you take, sleeping bags you take, everything super light. How is the speleo gear, the harness, the techniques, the cowtails to secure and stuff like that. So the first day is like that, packing all the tube, balancing the tube in the water, getting ready for that, have a good briefing for the upcoming day. And then the next morning, the second day, we actually start to head out with the boat. We jump in the water, put the dry tube in the back, you know, and all the gear, and actually scooter or swim to around 1.2 kilometers deep into a system called Beltorrente, where we actually go out of the water. We take the dry tube, we transport it to a base camp, which we already installed, and set up all the campsite, you know, the sleeping bags, the cooking area, collecting water, disinfect the water, changing from dry suit, wetsuit, for example, as well, to speleo gears. And I do around a 6-hour speleo trip in one of the beautiful strike cave I ever know. So I show them a little bit where we explore, where to go. So it's just like a super amazing adventure. After the day of the dry caving trip, we come back, we sit on the campsite, we start to cook, we start to chat, we stay in the sleeping bags unless it falls to sleep. Spend a good night in the cave, sleeping in a cave, and the next morning have a good breakfast, packing the stuff, transport all the gear to the water entrance, change the gear again back, and start a dive back home. You know, and around in the afternoon, we are back off this cave, and actually it's just like a super cool adventure. Now it's something like very, very unique and spectacular. It's kind of a 3-day adventure. And this is what I do with the SCAP project, to just like help people to understand what is necessary to stay in a dry cave area. Because you hear sometimes over the last years, people going in, doing the first siphon diving and then going out, walking over dry areas. And sometimes you hear stories where they say, hey guys, you take care about this, and this. No, I don't have any idea about it. So I came to the idea to really help these guys. They're interesting about in further, deeper, longer dives, what to do and small tricks and informations, possibilities to make it safer, you know, that not really something will happen if they do it right. You know, which kind of shoes you take, which kind of harness you take, you know, how do you secure yourself, what do you have to do. The cave morphology, for example, as well, you know, what to do if you see a highly frequented area of the cave. Sometimes we take off all our gear just to don't dirt up some areas. So if nobody knows that, if he is not a speleo or a caver, he don't understand. He will walk through over formations and dirt it up and disturb as well the microclimate inside. So these are just like small topics which I cover in this project. So if somebody of you guys are interested, just contact me direct, info@productsardina.com or toddy@productsardina.com. I provide you then with informations. I explain a little bit. I give you some pictures, information on what to do, or a PDF file with all the informations about the materials I actually supply. I have really a possibility of lots of equipment which people just can have in this project. They don't need to buy all the stuff, because I would like to show them which kind of equipment is good to buy. So don't buy anything before which you don't know, because sleeping bag, which is light and foldable and small, you can use perfectly, but it has a cost, of course, but this is a brand of it. Or we test a lot of biwax, for example, and there are some fantastic biwax available in this time right now, where we want to show the clients, hey, look, if you buy a bivac like that, you can have a thinner sleeping bag, for example, because the heat transfer is fantastic. The moisture goes out, but the heat is staying into the bivac. So if you have a 12-degree cave system or whatever, you can stay inside without any problems. As well, just like emergency situations, the bivac can help save life. So things like that we will discuss. It's really, really interesting. And it's a lot of experience from roughly around 20 years of cave diving and exploration I did so far. It's coming all a little bit together.
Toddy, thank you very much for your time, and I wish you all the best for your exploration projects that are coming up. Just the sheer level of technology that you're applying, I think, is beyond anything that I've seen anywhere else. And I think it sounds amazing. So look forward to hearing more about that.
Thank you very much, Steve. It was a pleasure to talk with you again. And for sure, we will have another session, definitely.
Well, I hope you all enjoyed this episode as much as I enjoyed making it. It was amazing to catch up with Toddy and talk about Project Utopia. I'm hoping that you were as stunned as I was with some of the things that they're doing in order to enable decompression strategies to facilitate this project. It was just brilliant. So a little more about Sidemount. If you're interested in learning more about the fundamentals of Sidemount diving, then don't forget my ebook, Sidemount Fundamentals, is available through www.sidemountpros.com in the store. Thanks again for listening, and I'll catch you in the next episode of Speaking Sidemount. You've been listening to Speaking Sidemount from www.sidemountpros.com. If you like the podcast, please subscribe and consider leaving us a 5-star review. If there's something you'd like us to cover on the show, then let us know via our Facebook page listed in the podcast notes. Thanks again, and we look forward to you joining us on our next episode of Speaking Sidemount.